As George's loved ones and his friends prepare for his memorial service, and that begins just in a few hours today, I want to extend just a sincere and heartfelt condolences. We all know he should be with us today, and as a country, we pray that God comforts his family during this difficult time and helps heal this nation. George Floyd's family deserves justice. His death, everyone agrees, was unspeakable atrocity. Yesterday, there were charges filed against the additional officers who were at the scene and did not intervene to stop his death. Those appalling actions by those sworn to protect and serve throughout our communities. I know this won't bring George back, but I hope it brings his family some semblance of peace. The grace his family has shown inspires all Americans. The comments they have made in a way to heal the nation, I hope all listen to. Our nation was founded and is still grounded by the rule of law. Justice through enforcement of the law and due process must be protected, just like justice expressed through peaceful assembly must be protected. His family deserves justice. Those who protest have a right and deserve to be heard. Those who loot deserve to have consequences. The rioters and the anarchists, they're not protesters. They are criminals. And in some cases, they have attacked and even killed the very people protecting communities in a time of chaos. Over the past several days, we have experienced more pain and loss as a nation. Everybody's heart dropped when we saw that the retired St. Louis police chief, David Dorn, who spent 38 years with the St. Louis Police Department, was killed just trying to protect a pawn shop from looters. David Patrick Underwood, a federal law enforcement officer, was providing security at a federal courthouse during a protest when someone fired shots from the vehicle. David's sister is a city councilwoman in my district. At one moment, she was deciding even to run for Congress, and she has now lost her brother. In all, we've lost 11 people since this violence ensued. Countless others have been injured. This behavior and tolerance of this behavior is an affront to the peaceful protest, the men and women exercising their First Amendment rights, and our local responders that keep the peace in our communities. Violence is not the answer. It is not honoring the memory of George or the legacy of civil rights, from Martin Luther King to even John Lewis. We need to remind every citizen in our country to keep watch that the flame of radical equality remains charged and stronger than ever. I know when John Lewis would take many of us down to see the March on Selma, when he had talked to us about being beaten walking across that bridge, and the feeling I got sitting with Tim Scott and others on the 50th anniversary, watching John Lewis introduce President Obama, of how far the nation had come in those 50 years. And then watching what I saw in all of us just in this past week, that is why we need Congress to come back. We need to talk. We need a forum. We should recognize and listen to one another, to show an example, to start the healing. We believe in the rule of law and the equality of opportunity, that all are created equal. We should not sit back. We also stand against the unfair, broad-brush maligning of brave law enforcement. I do not believe anybody should be judged by the color of their skin. We should not judge all just by the color of their uniform. The only way to show the first place to start to heal, that I believe from a point of Congress, is the forum belongs in Washington, not on Zoom. With a full Congress in session, working together to make our country a more perfect one. Our nation needs to come together and heal, and they need their Congress in Washington. I've reached out to a number of members on both sides of the aisle. I believe there's an opportunity to work together. One piece of legislation will not take away discrimination. Sitting and working together, not just within Congress, but across our communities with one another, That is the start and the beginning. That is the way to honor George's life. And I think we have to acknowledge this isn't just about what transpired in the atrocity of taking George's life. It's also the other things that we have seen. It's also the things that we have not seen, that have not been on a videotape. That's why the sooner we come together, the sooner we begin to heal. Yes, we are not a perfect nation, but we've always strived to be a more perfect union. And I think that first road starts by listening and working together. We need to heal, and we need to show the compassion to one another to make that first step. So with that, let me open it up for questions. Operator, do you want to give them all the rules of how to do that?
Yes, sir. Thank you. We will now begin the question and answer session. If you would like to ask a question, please press star 1, unmute your phone, and record your name. Your name is required to introduce your question. If you need to withdraw your question, please press star 2. Again, to ask a question, please press star 1. It will take a few moments for the questions to come through. And Mr. Joe Paleo, your line is open.
Hi, Congressman. Thanks for doing the call. You mentioned that there may be opportunity for both parties to be working together. Wondering if there are any specific pieces of legislation that you've heard about so far in terms of policing reform, whether it be tactics for choking and other things like that, or any other measures you've heard thus far that you think might be a good starting point that you and maybe the caucus can get behind.
There are a lot of items out there, and I'm having a call with members throughout my conference a little later today for Judiciary and others, looking at ways that we can find. I think essential is make sure the right training's out there. That could be tied to federal money and others to making sure that's happened. Is there a way to have an overview? Are there instances where somebody has had a lot of reports on them for misuse of force? And if that's just hovering there, how do we have an overview of that to make sure there are eyes on that and an audit and outside to make sure that gets corrected? Is there a challenge? And I may not know the perfect answer to this, and this is one that I've had talk with members on both sides of the aisle. How difficult is it to remove a bad officer? There are stories that have been told, and I have members who have been former sheriffs, members who have been prosecutors and others, and they tell us some stories of somebody being removed because of those actions and being put back in. Those are, I believe, would be the foundation of where we would want to look. And I think we could easily find common ground on both sides. And we could do it swiftly, but it's more difficult if we're away. It's more difficult to have those conversations and listen and looking at one another, not through remotely, but sitting inside a room and being able to talk and listen. I think that's the beginning of healing our nation and showing that we can work together and really getting the input that's needed. Those are just some. There are others out there, and that's what we're having discussions. And that's really what a forum should be. Members of Congress should not be called back for 1 week and say, here are all the bills. What I really think should happen is let's be called back and let's start working. Let's create that forum of listening to one another. We all come from different walks of life. We're different genders. We're different races. Let's put that melting pot together and listen to one another and bring back from our communities. Where can it be done better and how? Next question, operator.
Julie Grace with The Hill, your line is open.
Hi, Leader McCarthy. Defense Secretary Mark Esper broke with the President and the administration on the use of force or using the troops against protesters. I was wondering what your thoughts were on that, whether you agreed with the President on that use or the Defense Secretary. Thank you.
But Secretary Esper said it should be used as a last resort. And we're talking about the Insurrection Act. It's been used 19 times, the last time in 92 in L.A. I think nobody wants to see the looting continue to go on. That's why many have called out the National Guard and others. Many do not want to see that when this looting transpires, we're finding that there's shipments of bricks being loaded off bats and others, that people are misusing and harming those who are protesting and wanting to be heard. We want to make sure that individuals are protected. The rule of law matters in the case of George and in the case of every part of this nation. It's something that has been used 19 other times. I think National Guards are very well suited. They've done an amazing job. Those officers being able to be out there from that standpoint. So I think from what he's saying of last resort, but let's make sure we're able to protect this nation, and let's make sure we do not allow the looters to continue and an anarchist trying to tear our nation apart. They should have consequences. We need to protect our nation. I mean, I will tell you, many of you know me personally. I am optimistic. I consider myself the happy conservative. What I have watched in the last week depresses me. You have no idea what it felt like personally when my daughter tells me St. John's is on fire, or when you see a World War II memorial spray painted. You think from Madison forward, the presidents that have been there, what we have gone through as a nation. When Martin Luther King marched, the church did not close. And I know it's not about the protesters that are doing that. It's the others that are using a situation to divide the nation further. And I think that has to stop. And I do use the appropriate measures to stop it and protect the citizens. They cannot run wild, but it's hard to watch. You got to turn it off at night. And I think for all Americans, they want to feel safe. And I think from the president's point of view, he is going to protect the nation and protect our citizens, and he has the right to do it. Next question.
Alex Moe. Alex Moe, your line is open.
Hey, Leader McCarthy. My question for you was about some police have not been identifying themselves with badges while they've been out on the streets with these protesters. And so some Democrats now are going to introduce some legislation requiring uniformed officers to clearly identify the agency they represent. Do you think that's something that Republicans and yourself can get behind?
Look, I want to make sure the officers are protected when they're out there. I also want to make sure the officers that we know they are officers, too, that they are protected, that we know who we're dealing with, there's not a false representation. This is something that definitely we can look at. But I think they're missing the point, too. We want to make sure people are protected out there. We want to make sure someone is not misrepresenting. We've seen that before, people impersonating officers as well. I don't know that any unit inside from any area that I cover that you've ever had an officer not use their badge, their number, and others. Now, in a situation that we're dealing with now where you have Antifa and others, there are going to be officers in different dress out there, and they're not going to identify themselves to protect and gather information, and they have all the right to do it, and that's appropriate. Next question.
Thank you. Christina Peterson, your line is open.
Thank you. Leader McCarthy, there are some Senate Republicans who have been discussing urging the Justice Department to enter into more consent decrees with police departments that have been having issues, that Obama-era practice. Is that something that you would support?
You know, I haven't seen that about it. I'd have to look more into it. I'd be more than willing to look at anything at this point. But for that question, I have to look further into seeing what the Justice Department has done and what they haven't at that point. I'm not briefed enough on it to give you a clear opinion.
Okay, thank you.
Next question.
Sean Moran. Yes, sir. Sean Moran, your line is open.
Thanks for knowing me, Leader McCarthy. I was just curious to see if you thought after a couple of days of the D.C. protests and some rioting has calmed down, you think if Speaker Pelosi was fanning the flames by going ahead of the protest yesterday?
Look, members have a right to express themselves. I think what causes real damage is not having Congress together. Think about 2020 is an awful year. And it's probably some of the biggest challenges we've seen in a short time period. From COVID to what's happening on the streets right now to unemployment and others. And the one person that has the power to call us back is not. That's missing, and to me, is not doing the job of Speaker. You're misusing the power of Speaker to keep people away. You're misusing the power of Congress to believe that we are no longer essential. Never in the history. And to create something that is shadow voting, where 71 members signed to say they physically can't be there, but you hear comments, I looked at what we were voting on, it wasn't important, so I was with my family. Well, I physically can't be there, but I drove 2.5 hours somewhere else. That plays into the nation as well. What people are getting paychecks for not doing work. I mean, I think it's essential that we get called back, create a forum and a dialogue where we start listening to one another. The distance that we continue to keep away is not going to help solve this. It's going to perpetuate the problem further. So the first step is to bring members back and listen and start to heal the nation. All right, last question. I apologize. I got to do one more call. Operator?
Jonathan Nicholson, your line is open.
Actually, sir, you're in luck. My question has already been asked and answered, so go for another one.
How great is that? Just all of you, I mean, this is on a very personal note. I know you're feeling it too, everywhere you go. This is not who we are as Americans. This is not a time, I know people are going to go out and try to use different avenues in this. This is really a time for healing. And I don't know if any of you have ever been with John Lewis when he takes us back for the weekend, when we go down into the churches to understand what was going on. When you walk by and he says, I tried to have lunch at that counter there and they kicked me out and arrested me. This is as far as I remember as I was going across this bridge and I was beaten. I don't even remember who carried me back. We're more than 50 years from then. And all he was trying to do was register people, and they were being judged based upon their color of skin. We have come so far, and in this moment of time, for Congress not to be in session to deal with this, with the different walks of life that we have sitting inside there from every part of the community, it's wrong. It's not holding up to George's family, to the families before them. I believe this is a moment for us. And you're not going to get it by being on Zoom. But we're also going to set an example to help us start to heal and allow others to be a part of the discussion as well. So I hope you all stay safe. I hope to see you soon. And I hope at this moment in time Congress rises to the occasion, because I will tell you from those that I have talked to on both sides of the aisle, there is a great desire to do that. So God bless and talk to you all soon.